This is Sean, an American who spent 15 years in China working in marketing for high-tech companies. As we walked through the streets of Shenzhen, he showed me the latest Chinese tech and explained why the West should prepare for China's rapid progress, how the country has moved ahead of the US in innovation, and why the number of expats in China has dropped in recent years. I'm Max Chernov, your insider to Expat Life. What do you think people don't understand about China in the West? What they don't get about the country? What's the biggest misconceptions?
It's really important to understand that China is not this old backwater civilization. It's not what you may have seen in the news. They have high tech. They are the manufacturing breadbasket of the world, even if we do see some of that transferring over to Southeast Asia. They aren't going anywhere. It doesn't matter how many tariffs, how many anti-China policies you put in place, they're coming. We can see Huawei, they will just innovate their way out of it. Some companies might have a hard time, but the world has to worry more about not countering China, but how do you live with China, because they're not going anywhere. And more, they're as educated as we are in the West. Their companies are now going to be able to compete with the companies we have in the West and outside China. And so if the West and other countries don't have a plan to deal with that, as opposed to, oh, China has too much innovation, let's stop them from importing EVs into our countries.
It doesn't make sense.
Then your companies are not going to be innovating to match that. AI is another example. So I think one of the real challenges, the real risk is if you try and block China, you aren't competing with China. And China, whether you agree with them or not, they are going to be a big dog when it comes to a number of industries, including tech. And if countries overseas are not prepared to deal with that, then might be bye-bye. That's some hard language, but I will say that I am very much a China-West cooperation stand. I very much promote, I push for better understanding and cooperation between China and the USA, but when it comes to business, you either have it or you don't have it. You either can compete or you can't compete. And I see China now making some of the best EVs in the world, and I don't see Western countries rising to the challenge. I see them blocking the imports of those EVs. So I think it's something that we all need to understand. China is not the little kid on the playground. They're the big boy on the playground right now, and they should be taken seriously. Even if you don't agree with them, you should take them seriously. And I think that's something that people should be aware of, is that, I mean, there has been a concerted effort to put them out of business, or at least in certain sectors, but they have persevered to an insane degree. And many in the West, I think, don't really understand how much innovation, how much can-do attitude, we say 奋斗 in Chinese, is here in Shenzhen, to the point where if the West isn't careful, China is just going to out-innovate them, if not to survive, but also to surpass them and flourish. And they're going to have lots of partners, lots of friends in many other countries overseas. We see China having I was just looking at the news earlier, Chinese investments and partnerships in Africa has continued to rise, as well as across many countries in the global South. So I really like this one. You can see they have this really crazy desk here. Obviously, a lot of the Chinese cars come with the tablet on the dashboard. Standard.
Looks impressive, this car.
And
huge.
You want to try it out?
Sure.
So obviously, people with longer legs like us will have more of an issue.
I feel a bit like I'm on a spaceship, not in a car. American music, it feels like very premium. It's impressive, how they start with the phones and then they start making freaking vehicles.
It's funny because they didn't start with the phones. They started with the telecom, and then they moved over to the enterprise services and equipment. And then, because I remember when I was first with Huawei in 2014, 2015, 16 era, I don't think the smartphones was really making much of a profit, and they were actually being funded by the internal departments to a certain degree. At least that's what I heard along the grapevine. But obviously then they went from that to just kind of experimenting with phones, and then they just turned into this powerhouse to the point where they were banned from selling in the USA. More basically,
Where's this triple screen one?
This one.
Okay, you cannot even touch,
Unfortunately, no. It's
it's too expensive.
Yeah.
So how much is it?
So the most expensive, it's basically about 20, so it's probably around 3,000 or more, 3,000, 3,500 USA.
Wow. That's cool. It's actually very convenient.
Once a team of scientists decided to build a better internet where privacy is the default. People donated over $500,000 throughout crowdfunding to make private internet a reality. What happened next? This dream became a reality with the creation of Proton Mail, which is kindly supporting today's video. Proton Mail is based in Switzerland, where privacy laws are some of the strictest in the world. It's trusted by over 100 million users globally and even uses end-to-end and zero-access encryption. That means no one, not hackers, not governments, not even Proton, can read your emails. Unlike other big tech email services, Proton Mail doesn't scan your emails or target you with ads. It also blocks all trackers, so your inbox stays private. Where you are handling sensitive business deals or just want to feel safe while traveling or living in places with weaker privacy laws, Proton Mail has your back. To start using it, switching it easy, just import your old email seamlessly or start fresh with a brand new inbox. I believe that privacy is the right of everyone. If you think the same, click the link in description to get Proton Mail for free and experience email the way it should be.
我去深圳最喜欢的因素是中国科技公司的创新和发展。
What did you say?
I said the thing I like most about being in Shenzhen is the technology and innovation of Chinese tech companies.
You learned Mandarin even before coming to China.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important element of what we're looking at in terms of expats, the expats in China, because we really see it more of an evolution. One of the things you hear about if you're looking on LinkedIn is how the numbers of expats in China has really just plummeted in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And obviously COVID's one reason, I think, but of course you also have the Chinese government raising the rules and regulations for who can come for certain jobs. Part of that was to cut down the number of sexpats, basically people coming over maybe just to teach English with no experience or for not so good reasons, which of course does exist. I think, but we are also seeing, I think, the Chinese government realizing that the COVID situation, the COVID policies, while they may have been necessary at the time, really forced a lot of people to leave. So we see a lot of open visa policies as they try and really convince more people to come. The traditional expat isn't necessarily what's needed anymore. When I remember when I was first starting to learn Chinese, the idea was, oh, as long as you know the Western business culture, you can have graduated for a year or two, and then you can come over and you can just be in charge in the China office simply because you're a Westerner or you're from XX country. Whereas now there's a lot higher level in terms of professional education and competency. But there's still at the same time there's a lot of maybe suppliers or partners who only speak Chinese, and so having a foreigner here who doesn't understand the language, doesn't understand the culture, or at least doesn't have experience outside their own country can be somewhat of a liability. We still see them, of course, but it really makes a lot of Western companies think twice about, okay, who is actually going to be able to help us, get this done. I mentioned before how I've worked in big companies like Huawei and Vivo. I was head of global media and influencer relations in addition to some product launches. And you can't just literally sit at your desk and tell your subordinates to do something. You have to be aligning across product, across marketing, across social media, across all the Chinese teams, all the different local country teams. And some of them will speak English, but oftentimes they won't. Especially the people who have the real power to make decisions, they will often not speak English. Sometimes they do, but you can't count on it.
By the way, guys, if you wanna start working remotely, one of the options is to start your own YouTube channel. And I prepared for you a PDF guide how to make your first $1,000 from your YouTube channel. Okay, if you want this guide, it's for free. There's the link in the description. Go get it. And now back to the video.
What is this thing, the futuristic blue and yellow thing?
So there are a lot of government offices. They handle a lot of stuff for foreigners and Chinese there. But then again, they have a nice little kind of public space up on top, a nice bridge, and you'll see a lot of people, a lot of young people congregate there doing their TikTok or Douyin videos since it's China, but their short videos, doing break dancing. Though of course the older people will maybe be in the parks doing their traditional Chinese square dancing where there's dancing 100 people at once to tune of the beat, as they say.
Do you remember when you came from the US, like you came to China, did you have any expectations or like what you knew about China before actually coming?
It's hard to remember because it's been like more than 20 years, you say. But I think that you have a certain idea, and even back then in the 2000s, even when the language we were learning, it's really funny because even the word we used for entrepreneur was not what entrepreneur means now, whereas entrepreneur now is someone who can make hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, by starting their own company, whereas before it was actually called 个体户 back in the 1990s, 1980s, and it was more like someone who might set up their own street side stall or something very small scale like that. So even the language and the cultural ideas, I think, have changed in the last few decades. My first foray into China was in 2001.
Yeah, I guess it was different China back then.
I remember a very different China in Chengdu, where there were like literally 1 lane or 2 lanes on the side of the road cordoned off just for bikes, and they were packed as much as you might see for any rush hour, and maybe with a few cars on the road. Whereas it's completely flipped now. You see some bikes, not very many, but everybody wants to have a car now.
And it's not rush hour yet, but it doesn't look busy at all. I guess it's getting busier. Yeah?
It'll get really busy when rush hour comes along. Even back in 2010, 2011, when I was first working in Shanghai, it was as bad as rush hour could get. Though Shanghai has developed quicker than some of the other cities. We now have, it's not simply Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou is the big three. Now you have Shenzhen outpacing Guangzhou. You have cities like Chongqing becoming, I think, the number 4, number 5 in China. So really you have this development spreading out not just from the big cities, but to the smaller ones as well too.
Can I say that like Guangzhou and Shenzhen, they have their own beef between each other? They're kind of trying to compete against each other? One
of the things I've heard from people who lived in the Guangdong province, which is where both Shenzhen and Guangzhou are located, is we heard for a while that Guangzhou wasn't necessarily trying to stifle the development of Shenzhen, but because they are the provincial capital, maybe they were taking more of the benefits for themselves. I can't say whether that's really true or not true, but as I'm sure you know, Chinese officials, they will get promotions based on how well their areas do. So I think it's natural that different cities might have different competition, but they certainly would have competition and different goals they want to reach. And so that's natural, I think, whether or not there was some, I wouldn't say there's some conspiracy, but I do think that many people I know from Guangzhou, my wife included, really do feel that Guangzhou has let Shenzhen leap ahead of them. So everybody kind of feels that. It's not just the technology. We also see things like the fact that Shenzhen was able to be built from the ground up. It wasn't like, Guangzhou has hundreds and hundreds of years of history. They can't really change that much about the structure and layout of the city, even in the modern era.
Exactly.
But Shenzhen, they can do whatever they want. And that's why we see so many green spaces, which makes it feel so much different from many Chinese cities, including Shanghai, I'll say, because
Shanghai is an old city, right?
Yeah, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, they're all old cities. Shenzhen's very new. And so that's why you see all of this new green space, which is something I have not seen in other Chinese cities.
And it's beautiful. Like, it's so good.
And this isn't even the best part.
Do you think Shenzhen is like the best place for you?
I think if you're interested in technology, if you're interested in bridging cultures, then yes, I think Shenzhen is one of the better places. Though, of course, there's plenty of great cities in China. I'm not discounting Beijing and Shanghai, but I do think, say, Shenzhen is best from a tech standpoint. Shanghai certainly still has many advantages from a consumer-focused model, I think. But I mean, Shenzhen is one of the big cities now, especially if you're looking at the overall power of the Greater Bay Area, which is Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Macau, many of these other areas. And so it's really this big, especially this manufacturing area, it's a big powerhouse right now. And that's one of the things the Chinese government is trying to do by combining this one big area with lots of these cities, is to really compound all of the advantages.
And it's next to the sea. I mean, it makes it like this,
that's actually one of the things that I love about Shenzhen, aside from the green spaces, is just you can just go down to the sea, and this, one of the favorite places for expats to live is Shekou district. I don't live there. I choose to live in more of the, I won't say the Chinese populated areas, just a regular part of the city where everyone lives. There's certainly a lesser number of expats.
I met some Russian follower yesterday night. And he told me there is a like kind of Russian village. It's a silver beach.
I haven't heard about that, though I have heard of a Japanese village, or at least an area where they have more Japanese residents and more Japanese restaurants.
Yeah.
And up here, let's actually go up here, you might want to see this,
Alright.
is aside from the malls, I believe the Shenzhen Convention Exhibition Center is up here.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot of businesses coming in from China and overseas. I was actually at another convention center over in Bao'an the other week when they had the China High Tech Fair.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting because it wasn't simply Chinese exhibitors, but they also had lots of governments coming from overseas and governments coming all over in China. And they were all showing off what they had to offer. They were looking for cooperation projects. Even here on the DD app, it tells you when they're waiting for the light. They'll tell you when it's waiting for the light to change. I don't
even see the light seconds.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm not even
That's
sure if they do that in Uber or whatnot overseas. I have not been.
No, I've not seen it. I use Grab and Gojek, and it's not there.
Yeah, and that just kind of shows how everything is just interconnected, at least in Shenzhen and the big cities.
What's that? The huge
This
building?
is the exhibition center, and it's actually even not that big. The one over in the Bao'an district that I was at for the China High Tech Fair is like at least looks 5 times bigger, I think. I got a nice big walk during that.
I mean, everything is huge in China.
I think the Huangpu district in Shanghai is more bigger and spread out, but they've had a lot of room in Shenzhen to do a lot of good things. We come in from this side.
From this side?
Yeah, we generally don't come in from the street side. It's a little dangerous.
Sure.
Just gotta be careful. The cars can be crazy here.
Hi. What's the biggest lesson that China taught you think, through this year?
That's tough, but I think on the spot, if I had to pick one maxim, I would say it's not just about you. And I'm speaking from an American point of view, where we don't learn other people's languages, we don't really pay attention to their cultures. We want to call the shots. And if you come into China, you have to be able to learn to do things a different way. You have to learn to speak a different language. The rise of Chinese technology, we have to accept that a different way than our own way either works as well as our own way, or maybe works better than our own way. And being able to have a wider perspective, whether you're speaking a language, whether you're learning about a culture, whether you're doing business, whether you're trying to deal with international issues, learning that it's not only about you allows you to have a wider perspective and makes it much easier to work with others.